I go over today, and I kind of want it to be very informal. If you have questions as we roll through, I'd like if you just ask the questions and kind of spur an organic type of conversation versus wait until the end. There will be a Q&A at the end as well, but in case there's some things that are just you're just burning to ask, right? You got to get off your chest or something. Just feel free to say it to me. So, but yeah, so I guess without further ado, I can go ahead and get started here. I'll show my screen here, and we can kind of get this presentation rolling. Sound good to everybody? All right. All right. Can you all see the screen here? Perfect. All right, guys. So this is going to be supply chain at a glance, just talking a little bit about the present and the future, what we kind of expect to see moving forward, and some industry trends and things of that nature, due to COVID, the changes that happened, and basically just going over a lot of different things here. We'll touch a little bit on a couple different sectors here. Let me just get this rolling here. So we're going to do the industry overview. Of course, like we said, the effects of COVID on the market and the industry, effects personally on our company, on Suddath, what we see for the future, and basically what Suddath does to fit into this whole supply chain game, and helps put all pieces together. So starting with the industry overview, we're going to look at the warehousing, the fulfillment, and the transportation markets, as well as internal for Suddath, as well as external for everybody else in the market, and what we've seen. Obviously, everybody is very familiar with COVID-19 over the last year and a half or so, and it's been everybody's hot topic for a long time now, and we're going to see basically what that's done over the last year and a half to the market, and what we see moving forward. So we're going to start with warehousing. So we definitely saw a decreased demand for warehousing. That's traditional warehousing, of course, throughout the downturn of the economy due to COVID. A lot of businesses weren't booming, and so they weren't out there looking for storage for their products, right? They were kind of in reduction mode, trying to cut costs. And one of those things they did was they tried to reduce inventory, right? So they were able to store most of that stuff on site, like in-house, so to speak. They weren't looking for other space. So that was kind of one of the things we saw throughout COVID with traditional warehousing. However, as businesses trying to lean out to recoup some of these losses that they saw during the pandemic, we're going to see a lot of that kind of open back up. So while what we're thinking is that traditional warehousing isn't going to be quite what it used to be, it's still going to kind of open back up here as companies decide to, hey, we need more flex space again. We need more room for our products, and sometimes they're going to run out of space again in-house. One of the things we saw was a very concerted effort across all of logistics, was basically trying to cut controllable costs. And of course, one of the most controllable costs you can get is your labor force. So our company included, as well as a whole bunch of other companies in the market, cut a lot of labor. A lot of the workforce was cut. A lot of expenses were tried to kind of re-level, right? And workforce is unfortunately one of the ones that goes first because it's one of the most controllable. And now as things start to reopen again, we're looking to backfill. A lot of companies are scrambling to backfill these positions. And so a first course of action for a lot of them is going to be temp agencies. So it'll be interesting to see, temp agencies, staffing agencies, what kind of boom we see in those markets as well because of the supply chain market. So, supply chain is such a vital piece to the economy that it affects so many different facets of the economy. So pretty interesting. It'll be neat to see what kinds of things we see moving forward in the temp world. So trends, as far as that goes, we're seeing a big trend over the COVID time here for temp controlled warehouse space. That's not temp agencies, that's temperature controlled. So it's a big growing market segment. We've been noticing a lot of customers asking for it, especially with a lot of customers dealing now in like the vaccine stuff and COVID tests and different, medical and things of that nature. All that stuff, it can't sit in a warehouse here in DFW that gets to 85 degrees, right? So it has to be in a climate controlled location. So we're seeing that type of market kind of open up all over the country. We're seeing a need for that. So I think that's going to be a differentiator of the market moving forward. And it's kind of going to be one of those things that companies are going to have to adapt to. They're going to have to spend the capital to, install either at least air conditioned facilities. A lot of times they need reefer facilities as well. So it's going to be one of those things moving down the road that I know our company is going to spend a lot of time looking at. We have a few facilities already that are temp and reefer controlled, but the need for that's definitely growing. And of course, the last bullet point here on the slide is cleanliness and sanitation. This is kind of interesting. So in the whole climate of trying to cut costs, right? They cut the workforce, right? Trying to save costs, but they were saddled with another cost, which was, cleaning and doing deep cleans on these facilities. So for instance, one quote we saw here, it was 75 cents a square foot. Okay. Imagine that for a 350,000 square foot facility. That's $263,000 just for one deep clean on one facility. So in all these, costs we've been trying to cut, now we have to, worry about this other cost that just came, it was unforeseen, right? It was something we didn't think we had to worry about. And so it's really caused an interesting dynamic within the warehousing world right now. That kind of segues us into our fulfillment services here, which is our next slide here. It's kind of interesting. So fulfillment service is one of the areas that throughout the pandemic we did not see really too much regression in. It plays such a vital role in the final mile services now, which, as anyone in the transportation logistics world knows, that there's a huge need for getting things to people's homes. And COVID's forced a lot of companies to rethink their supplier networks, stage more inventory to balance those ebbs and flows in demand and supply. So with fulfillment, we saw a lot of companies reaching out, just basically saying, hey, we need some help doing this. Can you hold some inventory for us? Can you, help us get this out to our customer, manage the inventory, all that fun stuff. So, and here you can see basically looking at this little revenue graph here on the slide. Over the last couple of years, you can see there's a pretty heavy growth. I mean, in the e-commerce market, and starts to level out a little bit as you go into the the mid 2020s here. But at least for the next year or two, expect to see a pretty big boom still in that particular market. Q1 and Q2 of last year, kind of right where COVID reared its ugly head to us. E-commerce saw revenue swings 45% up, just from Q1 to Q2 of last year. So kind of that whole situation brought to light just how crucial our supply chain is and how important 3PL businesses are to the market. And us as 3PL companies have to kind of be flexible because there's going to be a lot of growth happening. So we're going to have to figure out ways to accommodate our customers and accommodate their growing needs. And of course, the e-commerce sector was the most, I guess, as far as customer mix goes, was our biggest customers in our fulfillment centers. Not surprisingly, as a lot of companies had to close a brick and mortar, and to stay relevant, to stay open, to stay generating revenue, they had to figure something out. And they didn't have the bandwidth, they didn't have the time essentially to build a robust fulfillment network, right? So what they did was they turned to companies like us that already had the resources and the space in place to try to help them bridge those gaps and to try and continue to service their customers in the throughout the rough market conditions that we had. And basically looking at the future for warehousing, or the future for fulfillment, basically is, okay, taking a look at a company. Is this company going to make it? Is this warehousing facility going to stay relevant, stay profitable? What they're going to have to do is they're going to have to move from traditional warehousing to being willing to perform fulfillment type activities. It's going to play such a vital role in the industry that it's basically going to make or break a lot of companies. So they're going to have to figure out ways to, okay, hey, we're not seeing people that just want to store stuff, that just want to sit stuff in a warehouse. We're seeing people that want value-added services. So they're going to have to make a decision if they want to move into fulfillment or not. And luckily for our company, we made that jump a number of years ago from just a warehousing company to a fulfillment and logistics company. So it kind of positioned us a little bit more on the front edge of that bell curve, so to speak, to stay relevant in that particular space. So customers are really looking for the whole thing, fulfillment as in storing inventory, picking, packing, shipping orders, and of course the integration too with technology. Technology, of course, is another piece that's going to really influence the way businesses perform. Everybody knows that, right? And we're going to see basically customers are looking for, hey, we want somebody to come in. We want you to integrate with our ERP system. We don't want to have to be worried about changing systems to this, to that, and whatever the case might be. So It's one thing that we work real hard on our solutions team here. Actually, I shouldn't say here. It's actually out in Jacksonville, but they work real hard to try and work hand in hand with our customers to integrate with their ERPs and give them that piece that they're looking for. So it's interesting to see. A lot of companies, of course, they're still going to try and manage their supply chains in-house. It's never going to go away. You're never going to be in a total 3PL world, right? But basically, the COVID pandemic last year, it taught us that, hey, so many things can be done remote, right? With remote workforces, even logistics. And for a long time, logistics was one of those things that, you kind of think you have to be in person to do it. And you still do. There's still a manpower piece, right? But all the planning and all the other stuff can be done remote. And it's predicted as technology continues to evolve and as the market continues to evolve, the actual supply chain management teams within organizations, within shippers and manufacturers and people like that, companies, right? They're going to keep reducing their supply chain workforce. So what that's going to do is create an even bigger need for outsourcing. So what we're looking at is huge potential for market growth, in the coming months, coming years, what have you. So it's pretty interesting. It's going to really be an interesting market moving in the next couple of years as we see the e-commerce market continue just to balloon and become, people have gotten so comfortable just, staying at their house and not having to deal with people and doing things like this, where they just, sit, relax, you get your groceries delivered. And so we'll see how that moves going forward. But for companies like us, for fulfillment companies, it's going to create a lot of opportunity for us in the market. I've been doing a lot of talking. Anyone have any questions moving forward here? Anything that might have confused you or spurred some conversation at all?
Brett, this is Mike Galloway from Dallas College. I did have one question in reference to, you mentioned about labor force and about, you guys having to let go of some labor. Now you need to bring some back. And whether it's through temporaries or, you're hiring directly, what kind of skill sets are you guys really looking for to hire within your organization? At the college, we obviously do a lot of teaching and training, and we always want to make sure that we're staying relevant, to what the need of the marketplace is. So if you could just expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So, most of the labor that was cut, honestly, would be kind of like warehouse labor type of stuff. So it isn't necessarily something that, requires a lot of, book learning, so to speak, but that was the number one thing we had to do. We had to cut our pickers, our packers, and we did actually cut some management employees as well. There were some warehouse management and things of that nature that were part of the reduction process. So if I had anything to say, it would be focus on the supply chain management piece of it, the warehouse management, the operations management piece. Those are the pieces that we're looking for right now as we open up our facilities again and start taking in more freight and needing more management for those teams of people. That would be, I think, where the greatest need would be right now.
Okay, so if I could take away one thing from what you said, you're really looking for individuals who understand the entire supply chain and kind of the bigger picture of how operations run.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the one thing we're going to need, because the situation is that we're going to need those types of people to manage the frontline individuals that are going to be doing the packing.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
And Brett, I had a question. This is Brandon Bracken.
Sure.
So we had a relationship with your organization for some time. You're probably familiar with Cindy Sutton in Arlington and Mansfield. Mm-hmm. And recently, like you're saying, a lot of our groups have scaled back and now they're starting to ramp up. I just want to see from where you guys sit, have you guys had challenges in competitive pay rates? Because that's a hot topic for a lot of the clients that we're actively working with right now.
That's a great question, and honestly, that's a question my GM would actually have to answer, because I don't get involved in that part of the transportation or the supply chain. But
good for you.
It's a great question. And actually, I invited him on this call, but I don't know if he made it on here.
Well, I'll love to look him up. Who would that be?
Yeah, his name's Jaira. Jaira Sansom, great guy. Here in the DFW market, he's a wealth of ops knowledge. I'm more on the the market and the sales side, and he's more on the operations and actual in the weeds type of stuff. You know what I mean? So he would be the guy to ask about that. And,
well, help me out here, Brett. Hooked on Phonics didn't work for me. How do you spell that first name?
It's Jira, and his last name is Sansom, Sansom.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Hey, no problem. Yeah, I was hoping he'd be on here, answer a couple of those operational questions I'm not too privy to, but like I said, I'll get to a little bit more of why some of the ops people that I wanted on this call couldn't join with me, because there's a big thing that Suddath just did, and I'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation here. So, so I'm going to kind of transition now to transportation a little bit. This is obviously the Dallas Transportation Club, so I'm going to touch on that a little bit because we do transportation as well. So this is kind of interesting, you know, just looking at some DAT information over the last year here, you can kind of see, like this time last year, after the basic COVID gold rush, as I like to call it, for toilet paper happened, right? You can see that rates kind of started to level out a little bit after that. Spot rates fell below contracted rates, which is always kind of interesting. This happens basically when there's an abrupt market regression, which is kind of what we saw. So you can see, looking at the graph here, the spot rates actually went down after the market went down. So to me, looking at data like this is always kind of interesting, because it shows kind of the stark trends that the market's going through, as transportation plays such a vital role with the market. And of course, you know, your contracted rates would be your blue line here, as those don't quite move as much as a spot rate do. So, and there's obviously a lot of reasons for that. Number one, contracted rates are a lot of times, you know, given for 6 months, a year, sometimes even more than a year in rare situations, although you don't see that as much anymore. With the volatility in the transportation market, a lot of carriers and the like don't really like to price things more than 6 months now, just because of how different things can be. So, you know, that's why you see a little bit of that. You see just slow changes with the contracted rates versus more abrupt changes with the spot market. But looking at the graph, you can kind of see there, late July, early August, you know, the spot rates and the contracted rates kind of came together there. And that's the time, you know, a lot of us were forced staying in our homes, and we were just demanding an extreme amount of retail goods. And, you know, offices were closed, work was closed, and basically all of this was just coupled with the decline in spending. So it was just kind of an interesting juxtaposition between people going from spending money on experience-based opportunities versus now we're at a goods base. We need all this stuff, right? So I just put an extreme demand on the supply chain. So that's kind of why you see there, spot rates started to go up a little bit, just placed more demand on the market, coupling that with the fact that all of that regression and the COVID stuff kind of caused a lot more mom and pop carriers to close up shop, right? They couldn't pay their bills anymore. They just weren't getting the rates they needed to sustain business. And so they closed up, and that also kind of cut the supply of trucks in the market, right? So that coupled with the heavy need for products at the time really kind of, you know, made that graph kind of start moving up there a little bit. If you look at the graph again, contract rates kind of started slowly creeping up, you know, around the end of the holiday season and into January this year. Then we saw contract rates actually surpass spots for a little bit in the market as it tried to kind of level itself out. And again, like I said about the mom and pop carriers, a lot of that was caused by that as well. Yeah, and currently, you know, the way we're looking here towards the end of the graph, we're kind of sitting right where we'd expect us to be. Spot rates slightly above contract, which is what you'd kind of expect. This is due in large part to February's deep freeze, creating a heavy need for products again, right? So we kind of saw a repeat of what happened last year, but at a higher market level, so at a higher rate per mile, so to speak. And moving forward, I mean, I don't expect it to come down too much anytime soon, at least not in the short term. That there are a number of reputable analysts saying conflicting things to that, but there's a lot more on the side where I'm also on, where we think that things are going to continue the way they've been for a little bit. And again, like I said, people are going to start shifting their spending habits again to more entertainment-based purchases instead of goods-based again, because they're just chomping at the bit to get out and starting enjoying life again, right? And we've all seen that here. I mean, in the last, month or two since things opened back up, I mean, think about the highways, think about the traffic jams you've been seeing on the highways. So you can see that that's an indicator of the market. And so with that spending again, it's, it's going to keep the market kind of where it's at. And one thing to keep in mind, there's always going to be a driver shortage in the transportation world. It's a continued problem as the driver population continues to age out quicker than they can replenish the employees. So it'll always be an interesting market. It'll always be very volatile, and transportation is always one of those markets to me that it's extremely interesting to look at because of how much it moves around, how volatile it really is, right? And remember the last few years, think about when ELDs came out. Remember how much strain that put on the transportation market. Think about how that jacked the rates up and drove so many companies out of business. And it kind of happened again here with COVID. It was kind of like a mini situation there. So kind of interesting. It was definitely something that it's just cool to study. So any questions regarding that at all? I will take that as a no. So just moving forward a little bit now, just kind of want to talk a little bit about Suddath as a company and where do we fit into this whole picture, and what are we doing to keep the market safe? What are we doing to help people out and kind of be good stewards of the market that we operate in, right? And what we can do to help all of our customers or any of those people out there seeking supply chain help. So things that people are looking for, again, like I said, innovative tech. This is something that we try to drive home. And it's interesting, there's so many organizations out there that struggle with visibility and inventory control throughout their entire supply chain, especially their outsourced components. And that's one of the key drivers that we see to people saying they don't want to outsource. They don't want to do this. They'd rather spend more money and keep their warehouses inside, right? And maybe pay for more space than they actually need. It's because they want that visibility. And so having the technology piece that we have as a company, we've created a whole bunch of in-house design pieces of software that we give out to our customers, let them use, and it kind of helps keep track of everything from beginning to end as if it was inside their own facility. A lot of our customers actually operate our warehouses as pseudo facilities through their ERP system, so it's kind of very heavily integrated, and it keeps that visibility piece for them on the front line. And one of the things that I like to talk about here as well is our direct provider advantage. It's whether you're in transportation or whether you're in warehousing. Everybody wants asset-based carriers. Everybody wants asset-based logistics providers. And working throughout different parts with carriers and shippers, and I can tell you that's kind of one of those things that everybody seems to want is assets. Well, it might not be the most advantageous thing all the time. It's got a stigma behind it that it's better, that it's more reliable, that it's got better information behind it. And so with Suddath, we are asset-based, and we have over 30 domestic facilities now. And we really work hard to give you speed and expertise and all of the stuff that companies require to really optimize the supply chain. I'm going to get to a little bit more of our growth here as an organization coming up. And as I alluded to prior about some of the things that are causing a lot of our people within Suddath right now to be extremely, extremely busy. So, but one of the cool things is we try to position ourselves as we can help the big guys and we can help the little guys. Basically what we do is we offer that big company resources, big company strengths and network reach coupled with a really personal touch, which is something that you normally see in smaller companies. It's pretty nice. I mean, a lot of our customers, they can go with the big guys, right? They could go with the big DHLs and the XPOs and those types of people, right? But a lot of times you're going to be numbered with those guys. A lot of times you're not going to have that feeling that you want, like you're actually getting that personal touch, somebody taking care of you. So while we have those same big reaches as a lot of these really, really large organizations do, we also have the personal touch of a small organization. So we help a lot of companies get those benefits that they necessarily couldn't get if a smaller company tried to reach out to a DHL type of person. They might not really get the traction they want. They might not, DHL might be working on too big of a deal to work with that smaller company. So that's one thing that I really like to try to do, especially supporting local businesses and supporting all the guys and all the people who had such a tough time through COVID, especially the little single-owned companies that were either forced to shut down or furlough a whole bunch of their workers and still pay their huge mortgages and their huge loans they had on their organizations, right? So trying to help those companies save money now, offer them a variable cost model versus sinking a whole bunch of fixed costs into a facility is really a key cost saver right now for a lot of organizations. But and the last little piece here I wanted to share about is our commitment to quality, health, and safety. Of course, in this climate, that's one of the biggest things we've talked about is the commitment to that. And all of our facilities are tightly controlled. They're all, of course, company owned. They're all very secure, and consistently we are audited and we meet quality and assurance standards. So, of course, we adhere to all the strict health and safety standards as well as compliance. And we are GFSI certified. So that's always, a great thing. That would be the Global Food Safety Initiative. So that's huge in a lot of our facilities. Being food grade is a big deal. So it's pretty cool. We currently have over 1 million hours worked with 0 reportable incidences. So that's pretty incredible as well. No injuries. And so that kind of keeps our guys being really, delivering the quality and the service that our customers really desire. So yeah, that brings me to our locations a little bit here. I'm going to talk a little bit about our company acquisition. We just acquired Darrell Flood. So if you guys are familiar with that name here in Texas, Darrell Flood's a very big, great brand awareness. And so we just acquired all of their facilities and all their assets and all that cool stuff. So as you can see, the yellow dots here are our Suddath locations. And you can see we were pretty heavy on the coasts. We only had 2 facilities here in the center of the country, and it was DFW and Minneapolis. Now, with all the blue dots and the green dots, you can see we can now assist anybody in all Texas markets, and it's really grown our network. And this just happened on April 1st. This news was broke to the general public, and it's super exciting. I'm super excited about it, and everybody in the organization is super excited about it. It's really going to allow us to go out and really help our customers a lot. So it's pretty cool. And all of these are going to be fulfillment centers, warehousing, and final mile centers as well. So it kind of segues me into the future and kind of what's going to be happening as we move into the later COVID stages here and kind of getting back to normal life. Some of the lasting changes we're going to see is final mile and that white glove delivery service that basically ballooned during COVID. That's going to basically stay here. That's not going to go anywhere. And that's due in large part to customers getting that taste of what it was like to shop online and just have everything delivered, and just the ease behind that, right? You didn't have to go out and wait in big lines at the cash register. You didn't have to do any of that, right? And so one of the biggest future market needs is going to be continually that final mile home delivery service. And for a very long time, that's a game that Suddath alone wasn't the strongest in, right? We weren't quite where we wanted to be in that particular game, right? But with this acquisition of Darrell Flood, they've already been doing this. They've already been doing home deliveries and final mile deliveries to people's homes. And what this has done for us, this acquisition has made us extremely relevant now in that space as well. So not only can we do the logistics and the fulfillment and the warehousing, and of course our company's legacy product, which was the corporate moving and the moving of household goods as well. Now we can also do the home delivery and compete in the final mile service against some of the bigger guys like your FedExes and UPSs. So this is going to be huge for us as an organization. And it's kind of going to really differentiate the market again as well. So now by this point, I'm sure a lot of y'all are kind of getting a little snoozy here, thinking about that mid-afternoon siesta. So I kind of wanted to put in some interesting mentions that I kind of thought were neat little tidbits of information that you guys might find interesting. So I'm sure everybody's heard about the ship stuck in the Suez, the Ever Given, which is a Panamanian ship, but it's actually Japanese owned, and it was lodged in a single stretch of the canal. So not only was it stuck in the canal, but of course a single stretch portion of the canal. And being that it was lodged in there for so long, it was causing $9 billion per day in lost trade revenue, right? So because of that space that ship was taking up, it was just, just causing just incredible amounts of money to be wasted. So economists say that the disruption that this ship has caused has not yet hit the market. It might not do so for another couple of weeks. So this is going to be extremely interesting to see what happens to the supply chain, what happens to the basically the economy because of this one particular container ship that got stuck. And this is going to kind of show us how important the supply chain is, again, to the overall economy of the world. And little piece here, the grocery industry is trying to differentiate itself and become basically a tech grocery industry, right? And so companies like Albertsons, for instance, which you see here on the right side of the screen, they're putting extreme amounts of money. This is a partnership with Google. And they're providing customers with an interactive experience, and it's going to be all AI powered, it's artificial intelligence. And basically it's going to create an organic conversation. You're going to feel like you're talking to a human being, and you're going to be able to ask it questions like, hey, how many COVID vaccines do you have at this particular location down the street from me? And as you see in this picture, they're going to tell you right there, okay, we got them down here. And basically this AI is going to link up to all of the inventory in all the stores that a company has, and it's going to also offer you predictive grocery list creation. So people are going to be able to, based on the trends, based on the things that you like. Sorry about this. There's something going on here. There we go. But yeah, so that's going to be kind of interesting to see how that evolves in the grocery industry. Just looking at all the people that want more technology in their life and more of that snap of the finger, kind of give me what I want right now mentality, and that's kind of going to drive that home a little bit more for us. And of course, the final mile, like we talked about so much already, it's so big. It's caused so much strain on the FedEx networks, the UPSs of the world, and all the big final mile guys, right? So now some of these little things are coming out, like this little car here that you see on the screen. This is called Nuro, and it's a Toyota funded company. And this is a fleet of fully autonomous, occupantless vehicles. So they're making last mile deliveries, as you can see, grocery deliveries. And so you're going to be able to go outside, and this little guy's going to be waiting for you right there, and you're going to pick your groceries out of it, and you're going to go back in your house. So it's really going to complete that process for a lot of people who really enjoy the staying at home type of climate that we're in right now. I thought it was kind of an interesting little piece to share. And one last thing to note, we are currently, the DFW area is currently in a wing shortage. Buffalo Wild Wings has reported that there is a glitch in their supply chain. And I just learned this yesterday, so I figured I'd share it with everybody because it's super interesting. And almost all the facilities in this in our area now do not have wings because of a supply chain error that was caused. And so it was really interesting because yesterday is a Tuesday, and that's the night that Buffalo Wild Wings uses basically all their wings, because that's their buy one get one night. And of course, all these facilities in the area didn't have them for last night. So it's very interesting. I'm sure that they had a lot of angry customers that went out specifically for that and didn't get what they wanted. So it just, again, goes to show you how important the supply chain is on the customer experience piece of your business. And it was a piece that's been overlooked for so long with companies, right? It's always a cost center, and cost centers don't get a lot of looking when you're talking about an organization. But I think people are finally realizing the ramifications of that and how important supply chain really is. So with that, I guess that kind of concludes all the material I had for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and open up for questions. And I guess I went a little long there, but I hope it was something that y'all enjoyed, and hopefully you learned something through it. So that's all I hoped out of it. So thank you.
I have a comment that kind of adds to this, and if there's anyone on the call who can corroborate it, by all means. One of my construction clients let me know that in the last year or so, the price of lumber has gone up by about 20%, which is heartbreaking if you're a new builder, for instance. But it's great if you're buying an old home, because it's so much more expensive to have a new home built when lumber is this much higher. And it all comes down to supply chain. That's exactly the reason for it.
I know plastics industry has been hit as well, and that includes the PVC pipe that goes in your homes as well.
Yeah, I actually know a lot of people in the building industry myself, and it's kind of interesting. I heard about the wood thing before, and so you're going to see builders trying to cut more costs. Instead of using 2x4s, now they're using 2x3s, right? So it's like some people want 2x6s in your home, but you're going to be paying a premium for that now if you want that. So it's pretty interesting stuff there too.
I've also heard that pool companies are having a difficult time getting equipment, well, because of the freeze, but also because of it shortage being imported from out of the country. So it is amazing how many things are affected by supply chain. Brett, this is Laureen. I have a question for you. You mentioned being asset-based. Is that for your home deliveries as well as your long haul and warehousing, or where?
Yeah. So the only thing that Suddath is not asset based on would be your long haul truck driving. That's handled through a brokerage division we have out in Jacksonville, but all of our local deliveries, all of our warehouse facilities, / fulfillment centers / last mile centers are all asset based.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I have one more question. Obviously, so much to do with COVID. I'm sure there's an increase in that. But do you see any other commodities that you're seeing a huge increase?
That's interesting to say. So we definitely have a lot of PPE type people looking for space right now. In fact, I'm talking with a guy right now who is a pharmaceuticals guy, and he's looking for space to begin fulfillment in a whole new market. They were based in the Northeast, and now they're looking to come out here to the DFW and start distributing their products like rapid tests and gloves and all that stuff, and even though we're kind of late in the game right now, that's still relevant to a lot of people. And so there's still a big demand for that. And that's one of the things that we've seen, I guess you could say the last year or so, a big uptick in. And industrial stayed pretty good for us too. Industrial has always been something that I seem to have a good propensity for, as far as dealing with the customers that, make things and, need little, anything from small pieces of pipe, to huge spools of stuff, right? So it's interesting to see that those people, as far as fulfillment wise goes, have stayed pretty relevant throughout COVID as well. Irrigation and things of that nature. So
Interesting. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Brett, this is Dennis Sims. I'm actually in commercial real estate, and I wanted to ask about your perspective on with e-commerce and how people are actually looking at adding more space so they won't have supply issues going down the line, just in case some other type of COVID issues come about to where they couldn't get products in. Mm-hmm. So, does my question make sense?
Yeah. So I guess you're trying to figure out, from our perspective, what have we seen as far as people looking for commercial real estate and things of that nature?
Well, that and just having to expand so they can have more supply in their warehouses. And even if you all ran into an issue like that with customers not having enough supply since they couldn't get more since everything was shut down for so long.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So one of the things that us as providers have to learn how to do is to manage our inventory better to free up more space in our facilities for our customers, right? So while the market kind of went as far as commercial real estate, from what we saw, as far as customers trying to cut costs, right? They weren't out looking for maybe signing new leases. They weren't out maybe looking for more space for themselves, but they were looking for more space from people like us who offer that variable cost model. And so for us, it was a challenge in the fact that, okay, so if we didn't want to go out and look for a new facility ourselves, we had to learn how to optimize our inventory better to free up more space in our facility, because we saw the market saying, okay, there's a huge demand here for us to be able to house more product, for us to be able to fulfill more product for our customer. And so we had to kind of take a look at our warehouse and say, okay, how do we better optimize this? Can we rearrange our racking in our warehouse to allow more stuff to be stacked in the same amount of space, right? Things like that. So I'm not quite sure that answers all of your question, but I hope it answers a little bit of it at least.
It did. It made sense. Thank you.
Hey, Brett Scharff.
What's up, Cheryl?
Hey, so I wanted to say if we could take Paul's question as last, and then any additional questions, maybe we can put it in the chat or move that into an email format or online. Is that cool? Because I want to make sure that we have a chance to go around the table and introduce ourselves.
Absolutely.
So Paul, I'll let you take that away.
Thanks, Cheryl. Hi, Brett. Hey, this may be an operational question, but regarding space and inventory, how do you, does Suddath or your client handle any product that's stagnant, obsolete, not moving? What do they do with that product?
So for us, I mean, we'll just kind of leave that in the space in our warehouse because we have a WMS system that allows us to put product in all sorts of different areas, right? So we don't have to keep, like, if you have a company that wants product in our warehouse, it's not going to be all together. Chances are it's going to be, you might have something that's way over here, you might have something that's way over here if it's not something that's extremely important at the time. And the only caveat to that would be a lot of your small pick stuff that requires, you know, a lot of movement. That stuff would all be housed together. But anything, like you said, that's stagnant or that's not really moving, we might just throw that somewhere else that's not in an area where it needs to be at the time, right? So if we see it's not moving, our WMS system will just let us know, hey, there's space freed up over here, put that over there. And that's what's really cool about the system that's in place is we don't have to know exactly where it's at because the system knows where it's at, right? The system optimizes all that for us, which is interesting because a lot of times going with the customer, if they don't provide us good data for them, then we can't really optimize their costs and their product as well as we'd like to. So, but if we get really good data and really good item masters on the inbound side, then we can really optimize their inventory for them and save them a lot more money. Otherwise, they're going to be paying for space they don't necessarily need.
Got it.